What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to FOAMBIRDS RC. I'm Hugh, and today we are going to be continuing the build tips series. In part one, the last video, we went over my technique for scratch building, so definitely be sure to check that out. I'll drop a link in the description. But for now, we are continuing, moving on to part two, and we'll be looking at beveling. So let's dive in. Alrighty, so let's dive in. Beveling. Beveling is one of those things that I think is made out to be a lot harder than it actually is. I know that the guys at Flight Test use a razor blade, and they can usually get a pretty clean finish with that. But I can just really never seem to. I think it's one of those things that requires a lot of practice, and ultimately there is just an easier way. So Josh Bixler has mentioned this in a couple of his videos about using sandpaper to bevel. So this is a technique that I'm a huge fan of. I don't think I would be where I am today if I was trying to do a razor blade on every one of my bevels. Ultimately, the bevel just doesn't perform as well, and it just doesn't look as good as if you use sandpaper. Sandpaper gives it a really clean finish, and ultimately the final product is just going to be a lot nicer. So the idea here is you'll just score the paper, very gently cut it, and then just rip that paper off there. And now you can take your sandpaper. I'm using 200 grit sandpaper here. I've used really coarse, I've used really fine. It really doesn't seem to make a difference that much. The fine sandpaper gives a little bit of a cleaner finish, I feel like, but on the flip side, it does take a little while longer. So it really is whatever you like best. I'll settle with something somewhere kind of in the middle. 200 grit seems like a pretty good number because you get a really nice finish, but it still doesn't take a while. So I'll just run this sandpaper right over the bevel at the angle that I want it. There we go. So as you guys can probably see, that is a gorgeous bevel. The sandpaper gives it a really clean finish. You don't get any of that inconsistency that you do with the razor blade, and ultimately it's just going to look a lot better. On scale builds, I'll do virtually the same thing, but with one little added step. So I've got an elevator here, and instead of cutting off the paper on this elevator, I just peeled it back. So I made the bevel, and now I will just take my glue gun and I'll run a very, very, very thin bead of glue right over this. The key is to not overdo it. This is just holding the paper down. So now what I'll do, I'll use my scrap foam to get that edge nice and down. Sorry, there's glue going everywhere. And then I will go ahead and wipe off all the excess glue here. So as you can see now, there's still glue on it. Anyway, as you can see now, it gives a really nice finish to the bevel. Instead of the bare foam, it gives a very clean look, and ultimately, it just, I think, helps protect that bevel a little bit better, because with that paper on there, it's not exposed foam anymore, so it just helps the bevel to last a little bit longer. So that is definitely something I like to do on scale builds. It just gives it a clean finish, and ultimately, it's just going to look a little bit better than just the exposed foam over here. But anyway, regardless of which technique you use, I think it'll look really good, and ultimately it will function really well.
Well, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. It means more to me than you will probably ever know. I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you guys learned something and hopefully can implement something, make your builds a little bit more scale, a little bit nicer. If there's anything that you guys want to see, any questions that you have, please put them in the comments below. I would absolutely love to make some videos, just maybe answering some questions that you guys have about RC, helping you guys along in your journey. So until next time, thank you so much, and I'll see you at the field.